Hello, comrades. Let's continue our conversation. Hey,
Yes.
Zhenya.
Hello again.
We have a short episode now dedicated to answering your questions. Short. I think it will be about half the length of the last one because there are a lot of questions. They are interesting and most importantly, they are on topic. Big like to everyone who asked these questions and thank you for asking topical questions. It's valuable. So let's jump straight into it.
Is it possible to utilize different colors or textures of seawater to provide some variation?
An example of a seascape includes the deeper rises of deep waters against the shallower, warmer water, reflecting light differently. Wow, that was a mouthful.
Yes. Well, I understood what it was about. Look, the different color of water has already been implemented, and it is on the map of Normandy. Perhaps this is not visible on scale when you're near the water surface, but from above it is. No, this is implemented not just by the color of the water, but it's due to the varying depth of the terrain. Our terrain of the bottom of the sea is implemented as well, and importantly, it's a separate topic, a separate work on how we created the seabed. It's a big job, and depending on the depth, the water color changes. This is visible from above. Well, right now we are working on new technology for displaying seawater, and I think it will become better, much better.
Yes, man, there will be a new visualization up close. I have already seen it. We'll show you later. Please be patient for now. When you see it, you'll be impressed. But also in the distance, because what is characteristic of the sea surface when we just stand on a mountain looking at the sea? At sea, if you look from afar over large areas, you can see tens of kilometers. You can see areas where the look of the water differs. This is because in a particular area, the wind blows a bit more and some ripples appear. Whereas in other areas, these ripples do not exist, creating the impression that the sea surface as a whole, its vast landscape, is uneven. And this effect is what we observe. We expect to implement it now as well. If everything goes as we have planned, we will meet with Sergei Vorsin again, and he will tell you. This is doubly important because I remind you, after Korea, we plan to focus on the Pacific, and there it's very important. Let's move on to the next one. In Korea, there are many differences in altitude, and probably it means the layering of vegetation by height, as it is called in geography in school. There was even a term for this.
Accordingly, will different types of forests be presented on the map?
For example, vegetation like evergreen, broadleafed, coniferous, and shrubs.
Yes, we really want to make this happen. We have data on this topic. We found natural atlases of the Korean peninsula, and we know where each type of forest is. And of course, we have the opportunity to plant different kinds of trees in various places. We will try to do it. There are certain limitations and challenges, but there is a possibility, and we have the desire to do it. I hope we will overcome these challenges and manage to do everything in time.
And yes, we are creating completely new tree content for this. So far, as you have seen in these screenshots, and for this release, we only have two types. One is a deciduous tree. I think it's some kind of Korean oak or whatever it's called.
Correct.
There.
And there were no other types.
Yes, and there is only one tree, roughly speaking. Yes, accordingly, there will be several types, and they will be, we hope, as Zhenya said, yes, we hope that they will be zoned, because they really are growing, probably still growing. They haven't cut down everything in Korea yet.
Yes, a lot is still left there.
By the way, wait, here's a question. Do you maybe know the answer because you worked on the map, studied historical sources, and I actually saw how you worked with them. Now, how did land use in Korea in the year 1950 differ from today? I think it's a really interesting question.
That's an interesting and complex question. Yes, because there are currently two Koreas and there is a difference. But all in all, there's nothing particularly military there. The trends are generally the same as worldwide. In the post-war years, in the 1950s, naturally, the agricultural zones back then were smaller than they are today. In the past, during the 20th century, especially the second half, naturally there were more agro-industrial zones. But again, only where it was possible, in the relatively flat areas. In the mountainous parts, basically nothing really changed. Yes, the shape of the fields changed a bit because there was more mechanization. In the agricultural industry, yes. Overall, some things have changed since then, but some have not. We will try to take this into account and make it more or less plausible relative to that historical period. That is, we do not take modern data exactly as is. We naturally modify it according to historical data. Basically, on topographic maps, you can see how the agro-industrial areas were arranged. We take this into account.
let's expand on the topic, because I thought it would be really cool to talk about the huge amount of work that has been done in relation to the change in the landscape in general in Korea from the year 1950 to the present time, especially on how to say in its southwestern region. Yes, that's what I meant.
Yes. The plains are mostly located near the coastline here, and of course. And accordingly, this coastline has changed quite a bit since back then. They have filled in areas and expanded the land zone to accumulate more fertile lands. Accordingly, the modern coastline is quite different from what it was back then. And so, yes, we have tried to restore it to the historic shoreline that existed in the 1950s. A lot of work was done on this topic.
And here's another funny thing. The work here is even harder in this region, and this specific type of work with historical simulators about the Second World War or Korea, right? So it turns out you can't directly use modern Google Maps like Microsoft Flight Simulator does. Just what you see, well, they don't have Google Maps. They have this, what's it called? Question to the audience. What's it called? Bing. They have it, right? And it fully reflects the Korean state. In the 1940s and 1950s, it was fundamentally different in some places. Some objects might not have existed, like reservoirs. And if we talk about Korea, the area around Seoul, not just the city itself, but the whole gigantic agglomeration, stretches for tens of kilometers, and the coastline is completely different. That is to say, they have piled up so much new soil there that in some places, if you look at a modern map, it's almost impossible to guess the old map. And is all of this done by hand?
That was a nuance that we faced. At first, we were like, "Oh, wow, what a difference! Let's look for historical materials and try to restore." But this is our, let's say, standard approach. We approached all maps like this. In Stalingrad, there are quite significant changes. That's where we started.
There simply wasn't a reservoir there.
Here we continue our tradition of the historical reconstruction of the area.
Correct, and here lies the answer to the question of why we still do not use photo textures for our map. Because the photo textures are, once again, satellite photos, and this generally corresponds to the current state of the map. So for simulators that about modern times, MSFS is where our competitors are, and accordingly they don't have these issues. Everything is about modern times, but as soon as something needs to be drawn by hand, all the complications that we talked about in the previous episode with the art director start to arise when you need to recreate a certain picture by hand. So you see, it's like the difference between, I would say it's something like, the contrast between photography and oil painting. Yes.
Yes, well, something like that.
Yes, and the artistic skills for such an approach, of course, and vision require much more to achieve a decent result. All right, on to the next question. Let's ask some difficult questions. Will there be wet fields like rice paddies and dry agriculture? In Korea, there are both.
Regular agriculture is in for sure. Wet rice fields. What is it about? Probably need to...
Zenki? What? I haven't heard them called Zenki.
I do not know. Yes, actually, they flood the small fields there to grow rice. And there is a thin layer of water which from above looks like a lake. Therefore, it's quite a seasonal thing, and in the first iteration of the map, we won't implement it. But we are thinking about the question of implementation. It's just not our top priority right now. We have more important problems there that we are working on, and but we are keeping it in mind to try to implement it. It won't be in the first iteration of the release, unfortunately, or maybe not, unfortunately. It's actually a little nuance that if you don't know it, you won't notice
apparently, the person who asked this was very impressed by the famous meme, "Welcome to the rice field." So, on to the next question. Would all rivers and lakes have banks, or will the water appear to be at the same height as the bank? What are the limitations?
Question with an interesting wording, but I think I won't understand what it means. First, about their shores. Of course, there will be shores. We have shores implemented. Texturing is related to the shores of beaches, right? They will be along the entire coastline, and in some places along the river coast. Somewhere we will have automatic technology working there along the river banks. You see, the person apparently means regarding the relief. To put it crudely, these are banks with cliffs, like that.
Or rocky shores. It sometimes happens.
In general, Korea has quite a diverse nature, and it has different shores, including rocky ones. However, perhaps this is not a very characteristic natural element for Korea, so we didn't aim for direct implementation here. About rocky shores, like in Normandy, right? That's where
Well, they are the determining factor there.
it's a very striking element of the landscape, so we had to do it. This is not a very typical element here, so for now, no, we are not planning to do something similar to Normandy because there are no such huge cliffs here. But overall, it's possible, but not planned yet.
Yes, but when it comes to rivers with lakes in general, we are not stopping the development of our engine with Korea, and we plan to continue further development. For instance, one of the ideas that could be developed in the future in terms of landscape elements is local volumetric or three-dimensional landscape elements when viewed at medium and close distances. For example, road shoulders could take. Right now, the road is just textured ground, yes, but here there could be three-dimensional shoulders too. Or again, a riverbank, meaning it should have some, I mean, when we look closely, it has a certain three-dimensional shape. Not saying we will do it tomorrow, but saying that we know about it, remember it, and are thinking about how to do it. We even generally know the question is when it will reach the priority.
And here, right, just one more little remark. We made rocky shores in Normandy, but this technology is not suitable here. That's why we need to, so to speak, develop a new technology that we are thinking about, but it's not available yet.
Yes, a question from my phone. Just a moment. What features will be included for creating non-historical or non-military scenarios and editing maps for them?
The question is kind of unclear, but let's try to answer it. Well, first of all, about user map editing. Modding has been around for quite a while, and we know of successful cases, successful examples.
It is going to be released soon?
Yes, it will be soon. In general, it's a modder's map initially. Accordingly, when with the right desire, any user can create their own map, especially since the tools have become much simpler and more accessible now. Accordingly, it's become easier to do this now. Now, the guys who did this before really suffered. Now you can work with pleasure. And that's why we provide these tools, and anyone who wants can use them. This is about editing the map, but it was also about the scenario and non-military scenarios.
It is already available, please.
The mission editor lets us create absolutely any scenarios, even quite complex ones.
We've already organized events and sports races. In great battles, a set of objects was created, various gates and so on. In the future, we plan to hold similar events in Korea too. So such objects will also be made there, but not at release, a little later. So there everyone will be free to run mega great races across Korea or anything else on their own servers.
Here's an idea for users. Maybe someone will decide to implement it. It just came to me. We can unload cargo planes. So we could make, our editor allows you to create scenarios where you can transport goods. Please. Of course, yes. Let's have an economic server, an economic game. Who can deliver the most?
Yes, in a combat simulator. Another question from my phone. It's really good. I like it. How will the condition of ground objects be tracked or changed? I mean, probably the scene rendered on the map during the war from their initial state to a point where everything has already been bombed and blown up accordingly.
Great, good question. I'll divide the answer into two parts. First, it means, look, we have, I remembered Normandy, and I mentioned that we had 2 maps of Normandy. Before the invasion and after the invasion, and there the map changed significantly in the sense that the Allies built many airfields on it, right? And that was the main reason, because we made 2 maps, late and early, just here.
And they built that, what's it called? Mulberry Harbor,
yes,
floating port, too, I
Yes,
think.
it was an amazing project. Read about it, it's a very interesting story, so here it is. But we want to, these are just 2 states, before and after, but now we have a new opportunity. We have quite a lot of cities, and this new technology of creating settlements allows us, this feature will be implemented in our career, that the destruction caused to the settlements, and not only to the settlements, will persist to some extent during your career progression. Accordingly, you will experience the war from start to finish. let's say the destruction will follow you, so to speak. That's why this technology, unlike the approach I mentioned, where we make two maps, is dynamic and depends on the player's actions. It's really great. So that's the deal.
Yes, that is to say, but if roughly speaking, you were flying, you participated in a mission where there was some kind of raid on, say, the industrial zone of a large city and bombed factory workshops there. In the next one, or the one after the mission, right? In the next missions, if you fly over this area, you will see that there is destruction in this zone. In Great Battles careers, there was no persistent destruction. Everything was rebuilt each time, but here it seems that the destruction remains, and what is more important, in Korea, many combat operations were related to attacks on bridges. A lot was connected there. Because it's a mountainous area, bridges are important.
Yes, strategic.
Yes, though these are strategic objects. You say it's only through them that certain barriers could be overcome, and this destruction will also work when it comes to bridges. So if you destroyed some strategic bridge in the mission, you fly in the next mission, hop, and it's still bombed. But after a week, you'll find that there is already a repair section on that bridge. So this is a bridge, and let's just say it was a steel bridge. A span of it collapsed, respectively. A week later, a wooden repair section will be situated there, and a month later, you might see the bridge restored. So there is also going to be some infrastructure restoration as well.
And this is not just our imagination from the repair section. These are historically verified facts, and there are photos of how they repaired bridges. It's practically a whole field in engineering. So, in the engineering.
By the way, do a search for photos of bridge repair Korean War or bridge repair World War II. You will find extremely interesting wooden structures. You'd think it was the era of steel and concrete, right? I mean, the 40s and 50s. No, but however, when it came to repairs, they made such mind-blowing structures out of logs that so there's a wooden bridge and locomotives go over it. Everything's fine. Even tanks drive on it. Let's take the last question, I guess. No? A bit off topic, but slightly related to the map. Will we have a company car or a jeep so we can drive around and take a closer look at the map?
Closer, yeah. Want to go for a ride on the
All
map?
right, let me tell you.
Go ahead.
Yes, there will be. Just not right at the release, but a bit later. We have a plan. Creating scripts not only for a career that will be released, but also for scripted campaigns. Also, they will certainly be a little more advanced than how we made them in Great Battles in terms of interactivity. But yes, plans are definitely being made. There are animated stories inserted at the beginning and end of a mission where you go through a sort of briefing, like in the briefing room, right, in some kind of tent. From there, you walk out. You can actually move around using the arrow keys. You walk up to a jeep, get in it, and drive to the airplane parking area. Get out of the jeep there, and then get in the plane. Let's fly. You've probably seen the videos and read in the dev blog about how our pilot gets in and out of the plane. This is the beginning of the topic that should eventually develop into this. And yet in the end, well, there will be fewer campaigns, but they will be more interesting. These campaigns with such interactivity, and the side effect of such development is that there will be this very jeep you are writing about, and you can actually drive it across the entire map. So with this sort of thing, you can drive through those very tunnels and bridges. Yes, now of course you shouldn't expect the detail to be like in Gran Turismo 7, but for some reason there is this category of users who, even though the map details are really designed for airplanes, like to play like it is a battlefield or Arma and enjoy exploration. Yes, you will likely have this opportunity sometime after the release. In closing, to learn more about these opportunities and the many other development news we will have, we highly recommend you subscribe to our social media channels. Please make sure to like this video, and again, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you very much. Zhenya?
Yes, thanks for inviting me.
Stay in touch.